What's going on? It's time for another episode of Too Hard for the Radio, transmitting from the future free state of Greater Idaho. I am the one armed madman, and with me today we've got Ronald Herron. Ronald, it's a pleasure to have you. Nice to meet you.
Thank you for
Thanks for
having
coming
me. I
on.
appreciate being here.
Yeah, no problem, man. Why don't you start off and just tell us a bit about yourself, and then we'll kind of dig into it.
Yeah, so I was born and raised in Brentwood, California.
We're at
Grew up in
Brentwood.
a, yeah, Brentwood, California.
Okay.
Yeah, about 40 minutes to an hour from San Francisco.
Yeah. I
And
uh, I lived in Cloverdale, California, is where I'm
oh
from.
yeah,
Yep, about
okay.
I guess it's 100 miles north of San Francisco on the 101, just outside of Santa Rosa and Healdsburg.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Well,
So
how
close
was
by.
did you like it?
Yeah, it was great back then, and then I got priced out of there,
Oh
once
yeah.
I got
I
older
mean,
because wine country prices just got out of control. I actually lived in San Francisco for about 5 years too.
okay. All right. How was San Francisco? Was there a difference? Did you notice?
I haven't been there in a few years. Probably shoot 8 years, something like that. The place was dirty and disgusting when I lived there,
Yeah.
years and years ago. And I think it's one of those things where I've said for a while that I'm not sure that San Francisco is much dirtier and disgusting today as it was when I lived there in like 2012 to like 2016
Right.
timeframe. I just think it's more in our face now. I think it's more in the
Yeah.
news, and it's something that they can kind of,
Right.
use
I
as a
mean,
political tactic.
the
But it
technology, I
was,
mean, it's all in your face now.
yeah,
It's all in your face. So you can
yeah,
see all the highs and all the lows of every major city on the planet. And, that is, it amplifies everything. It makes everything look better or worse. And there's a lot of, San Francisco gets a bad rep because it's so, dirty. There's a lot of beautiful parts of San Francisco,
yeah.
um, that I think a lot of people miss. But you're right. You go into certain parts and it is not where you want to be. So, yeah, San Francisco is great. I grew up here uh, until I was about 18 years old. At 18 years old, I had to make a choice. My parents were kind of trying to get me to go to college, but didn't really like that idea. So I ended up going the military route.
Okay.
And I was in the military for 8 years. I actually just got out a few months ago. So I was stationed I went to boot camp in Great Lakes, Illinois. Then I went to Pensacola, Florida for about 6 months. And then I got stationed at my first duty station in San Diego. And then I was there for about 4 years. And then I went to Italy and I was out there for about 3 years or so. And now I'm back here, back home, and started my own business, cybersecurity consulting business. And yeah, right now I'm just enjoying being a free man.
San Diego doesn't suck. I lived down in
Oh,
Temecula for a few years too, and I always enjoyed going down to San Diego. It's one of the nicer places in this country, I think.
absolutely beautiful. No, no comparison. I mean, the weather is perfect. The food is amazing.
Yeah.
The people, it's very diverse culture. You get a lot of different perspectives it's just a great all-around city. It's a little bit expensive. I think when I was
Yeah.
there was a point in time where it was the most expensive city in the US. I think I think somebody else beat it. I can't remember who, but yeah, it's really nice. It's a little bit costly, but if you could afford it, that's the way to go for sure.
Yeah. I was a dirt bike racer growing up, so I ended up moving into the Inland Empire after I
Okay,
graduated high school to kind of race dirt bikes and just have a good time and live. And
right.
man, every time we go down to San Diego for a supercross race or something like that, you go to the old Padre Stadium. It's like that place. I just love San Diego. And like I said, the food is like it's where you get the best Mexican food in the world is in San
Right.
Diego and that
Right.
that whole area. Like you can't beat it. And the beaches are awesome.
Yeah.
The people are laid back. There's money there, and it's not like quite as dirty as a place like San Francisco is and
Right. Right.
disgusting. And like, yeah, I always enjoyed going down there. It was like I said, the weather's just perfect all the time. You can't
Weather's perfect.
you don't get all the fog and stuff that you get up in Northern California for the most part.
Yeah.
Like every once in a while you get some, but for the most part, it's the only downfall is the traffic.
Traffic, yeah. for sure. I mean, you can kind of get that in San Francisco too.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
There's been a couple of times where I almost, because San Diego and Mexico are right next to each other. So if you miss one exit, you're going to be in Mexico. And there's a lot of people that, hit a hard right turn
Yeah.
because you almost missed that exit. But yeah, Mexico's right there. So the Mexican food is just off the chain. It's amazing.
Yeah. Did you spend any time in like Tijuana or Rosarito Beach?
I actually didn't spend a lot of time in Mexico at all. I did go to Cancun at one point.
Oh, nice. I've been there
That
too.
was for yeah. I went there for a couple days for spend time with some family. But yeah, I didn't spend a lot of time in Tijuana. I know people that did, and they said they had a good time. But there's a lot of you gotta be careful. You gotta be
Oh yeah.
careful down there.
Oh
So
yeah. Yeah. I've got a buddy that just went on vacation to what do they call that place? It's right down south of Cancun. I don't remember what it's called right now. Playa del Carmen, which is it's just
oh
like a
yeah, yeah,
resort town. Yeah, it's a nice place.
yeah.
I've been there before too. And he was sitting at a bar one night and he was getting lectured by some Canadian woman on like how terrible the US is and how
Oh
her
really?
and her husband are boycotting it because of Donald Trump. And why hasn't Trump caught a stray bullet? You've got all these guns in your country. It's crazy to me that he hasn't got shot yet. I'm not saying he deserves to get shot, but why hasn't it happened? Type of
Yeah.
thing. And at one
I
point he
mean,
goes,
you know, the rhetoric around, Trump and all that kind of stuff. And even when I was stationed in Europe, I would go out and, mingle with people sometimes. And other people's perception of America is very interesting. A lot of people think that, Trump is America, and, there's different portions of America. And it's such a hot button issue in our country. I'm not really quite sure where a lot of Actually, that's not true. I do know where a lot of it comes from, the frustration. But at the same time, when I'm talking to people and trying to engage in a political conversation, I always ask them like, where has this personally affected you? I know this is anecdotal, but where do you see change? How has this personally affected you? A lot of people, they just read what's online or they just see the headlines. They don't actually dive deep into anything. They don't do their own research. They just see the headline and then generate an opinion on the spot. And it's like, why? There's so much information. I get it. There's so much information out there for people to kind of sort through. But just getting so emotionally reactive about, these hot button issues like Trump, I'm not really quite sure where that's coming from.
it's the corporate media. You know, the corporate
Yeah.
media is garbage. It's just absolute trash. Like I know lately, every once in a while, like I have an iPad and I have like the Apple News widget on it, so I see like what's going through Apple News, and you are you are hard pressed to find an article on that site in from any of the mainstream or corporate media, press outlets that has any type of positive spin on anything that Trump does. And
Yeah.
you would think like if you were being objective that there would at least something that he does would garner some sort of
Yeah.
positive response, right? But it's not. It's all negative. Like the Washington Post recently has been on a tirade over these, drug boat hits that they've been doing
Yeah.
and taking out these
Yeah.
drug boats. And I read one of the articles a couple of weeks ago, and they were freaking out over this is war, and you have to go to Congress to get approval for war, and you have to do this and that, and the people didn't vote for this, and blah blah blah. And it's like, hey, where was that talk during Iraq or Afghanistan or
Yeah.
Vietnam or any of the other wars that you guys have been pushing over the past 40 years, my entire lifetime? The Washington Post has never been anti-war. They're a pro-war site. And
Yeah.
all of a sudden, when Donald Trump starts to do something that, you know, might have a positive impact on the country, like I'm against the drug war. Like I think drugs should be legal. I think the war on
Mhm.
drugs has been an absolute disaster. But aside from that, like,
Yeah.
this is something that affects everyday people in this country is fentanyl, is cocaine,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I read an article recently that said that cocaine prices are way up since they've started doing these strikes on the drug boats. And I just
Really?
thought it was disgusting that like the Washington Post is not anti-war. They're anti-Trump, and they would be
Yeah.
more. They're more anti-Trump than like the protection of the people of this country. They don't care about the people of this country. They care about who's calling the shots up top because that's what affects them, not the
Yeah.
everyday people, you know. And I don't know. It was just, it was so disgusting. I was, as I'm reading it, I'm just like, you absolute monsters. I can't stand
Yeah.
you.
I mean, the perception, people's perception on Trump is ill-formed. I mean, they, I consider myself like apolitical. I kind of, consider myself more of a moderate, you know. I don't swing too far one way or the other way. But, a question I always ask people whenever they bring up Trump or politics or anything like that, I always say, can you name one thing that you like about them? And there's always a resistance. There's always, a resistance against that sort of way of thinking. And, I always invite people to consider the possibility that, you're wrong. Just be open to the idea that you're wrong. And then we can have a conversation and sort of shift through, what is the correct approach to certain situations like the bombing that you mentioned. I don't know enough about the bombings. What I do know is that there do need to be checks and balances when it comes to doing stuff like that. Um, I'm against, I'm against drugs, flooding our countries. Um, I don't really think that I don't really see the net positive in, you know, our streets. I mean, you can go to San Francisco right now and you'll see a bunch of people on drugs walking through
Yep.
the streets, needles, all that kind of stuff. And you know, it it shifts your perspective. But I think what shifts your perspective even more is going to different places and seeing all the different ways of living. I think right now we're at a place where a lot of people are so isolated, they get trapped in their local area in this echo chamber, and they don't really get the chance or they don't want to experience something else in a fresh perspective on things. So as far as Trump is he is a very polarizing entity, and yeah, I'm not sure what he has in store for us the next, 3 years, because this year, just this year alone, has been very interesting to see some of the sort of things that he's been doing and saying. I've also heard that, Trump is also he's not the same person as, he is in front of the camera.
Mhm.
I look at some interviews of people who talk to him behind the scenes and stuff, and, they say he's very different. So I would be interested to hear what he has to say, like one on one, before generating such an emotional reaction to some of the things that he's doing.
Yeah. I think everybody's a little bit different when they're on camera. For me, like
Yeah,
I'm technically the same guy, but I'm kind of turned up to 11 a little bit on the podcast.
right.
You kind of have to be a little bit more energetic and a little bit more opinionated. And, it's just
Yeah,
a little bit extra on the
yeah,
podcast. And I could see that. Like, I think one of the more transparent interviews that Trump's ever done was on Joe Rogan. It seemed like he kind of calmed down and he wasn't
yeah,
doing as much of the Trumpian stuff that he's, so famous for. And I think that was a decent, also like on Theo Vaughn, he gave a pretty good candid interview on that show as well. But yeah, like you said, I would be interested to see what he's like off camera. I have like a theory that I think most of the people, maybe not most, but a good percentage of the people in this country are really libertarians and not so much Republicans or Democrats or conservatives or
right,
liberals. I think they're just not really sure like what a libertarian is, and they've kind of been conditioned to hate libertarians for one reason or another. Like I think most people in this country are for bodily autonomy. They're just not
yeah,
really sure how far that extends, and does bodily autonomy extend to an infant in your stomach? Does it extend
right,
to, drugs and stuff like that? Like, I've only known you for a few minutes, but I would guess, like, I would bet most of the money that I have that if heroin was made legal today, you wouldn't be at a heroin shop buying it. You know
right,
what I mean?
right, yeah,
Like, and I think that would hold true for most of the people in this country. Like, we have drug addicts, we have addicts, and that's not going to
yeah,
change whether drugs are legal or illegal. If hopefully if they would be legal, then they would be safer and it would be harder to OD on fentanyl when
right,
buy something, ecstasy or something like that, and you end up ODing on fentanyl. So and like I think most of the people in this country are anti-war from,
yeah.
there's some crazies on the right wing and some crazies on the left wing that, you know, the right wing is going to do whatever, you know, is in Israel's interest in the Middle East,
Yeah,
and the left is going to want to defend any, you know, smaller country like Ukraine from aggression or whatever they want to call it. But I think there's a good portion of this country that is anti-war and does not want to see people like you get thrown over into a country that you've never been to before and have no
right.
interest in defending, you know, and watching you or your buddies get maimed or killed. Like, I don't think that's, you know, in the interest of most of the people in this country. It's just we've been
Yeah, I
conditioned
don't.
to have this fight
I
to the
think
death over a 4 year presidency. And if you're not with the Democrats, you're with the Republicans. And
right,
it's, you
exactly.
know, it's this game that they've been playing on us my entire life and before.
Yeah, I don't know anybody personally that advocates for war. For war, I know a lot of people that advocate against it. You know, war is always ugly on both sides. It never is a. It never goes the way that you think it's going to go. And you know, as far as the wars that have popped up while I was serving, um, you know, one of the interesting things that I noticed is speaking about the war in the Middle East. Um, I didn't really quite understand where all of this energy and emotion came from when they, you know, you see a lot of pro-Palestine stuff. And I understand all of that. But what I'm saying is there's a lot of stuff going on in Africa. I don't know if you've heard about what's going on in Africa.
Yeah, oh
You
yeah.
know, they're like killing a group of people, like a mass group of people. And, you know, that's been going on for a while and that just goes right under the radar. So, you know, it goes back to what we were talking about earlier with the corporations that have a power over all of these, you know, narratives and all these competing narratives. And it's a lot of ultimately it's a lot of they're competing for power
Mm-hmm.
and dominance. And I'm just not sure if that's the future that we want to go into, especially when you know, have things like so un as uncertain as AI. You know, AI will radically change the future. I don't think anybody's really mentally ready for AI. And some of the predictions that you hear, some of them can be quite frightening. I'm actually an AI optimist. I think that AI is going to, you know, take our country and the world really to the next level in a way that nobody sees coming. You know, there's a lot of people that think AI is going to be, you know, there's going to be robots in the streets and you're not going to be able to do anything. And, you know, everyone's going to have curfews. And, but I'm just not a believer in that. I think AI will simply, all it is an input source. So it'll just give us whatever we're giving it. So whoever's running AI, whoever's developing these algorithms, you know, it's really going to be on them to do what's best for the people and, you know, the people of the country, the people of the world. And I hope and I think they understand the gravity of their decisions um, when it comes to that. Yeah.
You know, I think that AI is a, you know, artificial intelligence, whatever, is a big buzz term right now that kind of covers a lot of different sections of technology. And I think that like a lot of these companies, especially like factories, people who are doing repetitive tasks, think that they need AI to make, you know, their factories better and to kind of replace outdated workers and stuff like that. But really all they really want is better automation. You know, they
Right.
need an automated system that is able to perform repetitive tasks quicker and more efficiently than a human, essentially. And I think personally, like you know, I was a worked as like an electrical line worker before I got hurt, and I've always been into energy since I was a kid. My dad was a line worker as well, so like energy was something that was discussed a lot in my household. My dad was always pointing out different systems and how they worked, and I was always interested in nuclear power plants and stuff like that. And I think personally that people are under the impression that all jobs are going to go to AI in the near future. And I don't think that's the case. I think that we're kind of riding a wave right now, and we're at kind of like the peak of the wave, and it's going to kind of hit a trough, and it's not going to keep peaking at the rate that it has in the past couple of years. Like ChatGPT came out, and that was a big, wake up call to anybody who started using the thing. Was like, holy crap, these things are a lot better than we
Yeah.
gave them credit for. And it kind of accelerated, the idea of artificial intelligence in general culture. But to me, like, I think, especially like the way that it's done right now, is they're, you know, training these models with massive amounts of energy. And energy is just something that we're not really good at producing in this country anymore. We could if we wanted to, but we don't. They regulations and even building power lines in this country is extremely difficult because of regulations and eminent
Yeah.
domain. And we have a massive workforce shortage. So even if we wanted to build the thousands and thousands of miles of power lines that are required for something like this to kind of take form and take the next leap, it's, going to take a lot of change in the way that we build infrastructure and the way that we, you know, look at work essentially,
Yeah.
because most people are under the impression at this point that if you're a construction worker, you're a loser and you're destroying your life if you don't go to
Right.
college, type of thing. And that needs to change. We need
Yeah.
a lot less liberal arts majors and a lot more construction workers for the
Right.
most part. So I kind of think that, like, unless they can change the architecture, the underlying architecture of how artificial intelligence works, or they can, change the way that we do energy, which to me would be space-based data centers. Like,
Yeah.
it's going to be expensive at first, but like that's the really the only way that you're going to take this form of artificial intelligence and take it to the next level, because it's, going to be really expensive to do, but it's going to be easier in a lot of ways to do
Yeah.
up in
You're
space
the
than down on ground.
you're not the first person I've heard talk about space data centers, but going back to what you said earlier about the construction worker, and I'm a big believer, in that idea, in not, shaming people for their occupation. And I think you're going to start to see degrees being less valuable and
I mean,
more
they
of
already
like,
are.
right, exactly. Yeah,
Like, how
exactly.
many college grads do you know that are driving Uber right now? Because I know
Exactly.
quite a bit.
Me too. Yeah. A lot of people go to college and sometimes it's like a free vacation. I know a lot of people that went to college and they're just, screwing around or, going to parties and, they
No
graduate,
idea
but,
what they want to do with
yeah,
that
no
degree.
idea.
They're
No
just going to
idea.
go in and figure it out.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and I think some of that is age appropriate, but there need to be a little bit, there needs to be more direction. We can't just say, you know, oh, I'm going to go to school for art and then not have a plan after that. I think a lot of these college graduates get out and they're just kind of freeballing it, or they think they can lean on their parents, or whatever the case may be, maybe because their parents paid for their whole college tuition.
Yep.
And then you end up in situations where you have the Uber drivers that you were talking about earlier, when that's their whole job and that's their life. So I think we as a country, as a society, really need to have a real conversation about, you know, the ripple effect of that sort of mentality, the devaluing of the college degree, and starting to emphasize some more of these low-level jobs that people just take for granted. You don't think about the plumber, you don't think about the construction worker, you don't think about even your electrician really sometimes. Um, but everyone always sees the headlines, but it's these little jobs that people
Yeah.
are going to have to fall back on. And really, it might even be their only source of income.
Yeah.
And I think we're going to have a real conversation about, the jobs. I don't think, like you said, AI is going to replace all jobs at all. There's going to be certain occupations that do keep in step with their line of work, but I think most jobs will be automated. Like, for example, if
Yeah.
you're talking, if you're if I call a certain company and there's like an automated, voice person behind there, you sometimes you don't even know if there's if there's a person or if you're talking to a robot. I've had that happen a couple of times where I didn't even know. So I think those jobs are definitely going to be, on the chopping block. Um, I think people are going to look more towards finding some semblance of meaning. I think with the amount of jobs that's lost, there's going to be a lot of people just kind of in a limbo state. People are going to look naturally gravitate towards some semblance of meaning. And I think we need to start pivoting the conversation about what that actually looks like on a practical level, because there's going to be who knows, people do crazy stuff when, their money's on the line.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure what the government has in store for us in regards to that, but what do you think is going to be, the outcome of, you know, this AI in 5 years from now, let's say 2030?
Yeah, I think you're kind of on the right track with what I'm thinking. I think like a lot of secretarial jobs automated are going to be automated out. I think most of the people that you talk to on the phone are probably going to be automated out. Like right now, it's still, when you hear a robot answer the phone, you're just like, give me a person. Like, I don't
Yeah,
deal with this
exactly.
freaking thing because it doesn't know what it's talking about. But I think that that's changing rapidly. And I think that's for the better. I don't think that that's a job that a person should be wasting their time on. I think it should be 10 to 1 robotic, call robots answering calls. And then you've got one human on standby in case the robot can't figure out what the hell's going on, type of thing.
Yeah,
I think that there's a lot of people wasting their time for the most part, like being secretaries or planning events or doing these menial jobs that aren't really fulfilling. They're a paycheck, but you're not building anything, you're not creating
right.
anything, you're kind of just going through the motions. And I think a lot of those will be automated out. And I think that's for the better. I
Yeah,
think that there needs to be more targeted education. If you get out of high school and you want to be a nurse or a doctor or an
right,
engineer, like those are jobs that we're going to need in the future because you're not going to be able to automate all of them out. Like there's going to
right.
be automation that's going to help make their jobs easier, but you're still going to need people in all of those aspects. Um, so I think like if you're a person that gets out of high school like I was, and I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life, you have no business
Right.
spending 100 grand to go to college and figure it out. And then get
Yeah.
out and realize that, oh crap, this degree is worthless.
Yeah.
I went to college after I got hurt. It was like retraining. We'll get you a degree and then you'll be able to retrain. And I went for business and it's a worthless degree. There's not a single
Yeah.
job that I could do with this, associate's degree that would pay me more than bartending because I was a bartender,
Right.
before I got into line work. And like I could make more money bartending than any low level business, degree is going to get me. It's just not going to happen. I went to trade school for line work and that was like a 4 month school. You went, I think it was 4 days a week. You did like 4 hours in the classroom, 4 hours out in the field, and it was a very accelerated learning. I learned far more in 4 months at a trade school than I did in 2.5 years of college.
Yeah.
It wasn't even close. Like a lot of my time in college was spent just doing stupid things.
Yeah.
And honestly, my game for college was like I'm going to cheat as much as I possibly can because I know like I'm not one of these idiot kids who goes in thinking that like I'm going to get a job working an executive for Google with a
Yeah.
business degree from a city college, that's in my
Yeah.
neighborhood. Like I knew that this degree was going to be worthless and I wasn't going to use it for anything. So my game was is put as least amount of work into it as possible. And like as
Right.
ChatGPT came out, it got even easier and easier to cheat. I
Yeah.
had to put less work into it. And I think that that skill alone, learning how to make technology work better for me, was a more valuable learning experience than the bullshit that I was learning about in college. Like as a
Yeah.
business major, I would say 60% of the stuff that I learned about was climate change. Why do I need to know about climate change to work
Right.
as a business, as a business major? It's just to me it was ridiculous. Like the main things they had me learning was climate change, Microsoft Word, works cited. The works
Yeah.
cited was so important. It's like you were in the military for a long time. You're working in, business now. Have you ever needed to do a works cited for anything?
No. No.
Exactly. Like my mom has worked in law for her entire adult life. She's never had to do a works cited before. She works for the Supreme Court of Idaho and she doesn't have to do a works cited for anything. Like, what are you using that for unless you're going to be a teacher or a
Yeah.
professor, And like a lot of the people that, I was learning things from, learn teachers and professors in college, they had never worked a real job in their entire life. They've never
Right.
provided value. They've never made a product. They got out of school and didn't know what to do with themselves. So they stayed in school.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. One of the points that you said earlier was you talked about, cheating and cutting corners and everything like that. And it's very difficult. We're putting, young people in general in a very difficult position because you're in a position where you're going to get outcompeted if you're not using AI to help you. It's
Yep.
just that it's very simple. If you're not using AI to help you and you're going up against people that are using AI, you're just simply going to get outcompeted.
Yep.
So that's another that
Like
is an issue in and of
I had to
itself.
take a class on accounting and I just didn't get it. Like it
Yeah.
just didn't click for me. It was one of those things where I just had a really hard time with it. And the whole time that I'm doing this crap, I'm thinking, what is the point? Like, if I'm working in a business at some point, I'm either going to hire an accountant or that accountant is going to be automated out of existence within the next 5 to 10 years, anyways. So, like, what is the point in learning this stupid stuff?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't have an answer for you there.
Yeah, I don't,
I'm
I
not
don't
sure
either.
where
No
these
one did.
where, yeah, I know. I'm not sure where these I'm not sure where these colleges are getting, their guidance from, but it seems like, AI needs to be talked about now. We need to get ahead of this now,
Yeah,
as a society. I think there are sort of conversations being had with AI and how to manage it. Um, I know that there's some schools and there's some ways that you can actually use AI legitimately. There's some guidance around that. But as far as, getting out competed, man, getting out competed in this day and age, it's all about competition and the
how
the
fast can you do your job efficiently?
speed, right?
Like
Speed. How
that was
fast can you do
line
it?
work. Like when I was in line school, every task that we had to perform was timed and you were
Yeah,
put up against your competitor because that's the game in line work is get this done as quick as you possibly can. Another
yeah,
thing that I had to do in college was statistics. And like I just I hated it. It wasn't the hardest thing in the world, but it was
yeah,
just so repetitive. It was such a daunting task. And like, what are humans bad at? Big data sets. What are
yeah.
computers and AI great at? Big data sets. So like,
Right.
why is and like one of the more frustrating things was like I'm interested in economics. Like I'm a Bitcoiner. I'm as like a libertarian, economics is a big part of libertarian theory. And like I
Right.
think that economics is one of the reasons our country is failing right now. Like Trump is doing the same thing that Biden did economically. Oh, the economy's great. Don't trust your lying eyes, person who
Yeah.
can't afford to live. And like, dude, the economics sections in college were ridiculous. I can learn more about economics in an hour podcast,
Oh yeah.
listening to Michael Saylor than
Yeah.
listening to an entire semester of these idiot teachers who don't have never worked in a real job in their entire life. And like the stuff like and to me, that is what is more important as like a business owner is understanding the economic situation that you're in. When is a good time to invest? Is, right now, is this a good time for me to buy new equipment and expand my business? Or should I wait until interest rates are lower because it's going to be easier for me to finance stuff like that? And just it wasn't there at all. And by the end, like I kind of realized that they weren't training people to operate a business or create their own business. They were training managers that had a little bit of experience in business. And that's all it
Yeah.
was, just the next level of management.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard as a kid. I would imagine now, you know, trying to getting convinced to go to college when you have something like your phone. You know, in your phone, I could look up, you know, I can probably get everything that I would get from a degree in my phone in a day or two.
Yeah.
You know, I can just find all the information. It's just all right there. It's all at your fingertips. And it's hard to want to go to college. The only incentive for college is the vacation that we talked about earlier,
Yep.
is to just kind of just go and chill and just kind of
And you can do
escape life.
that without it. Like I said,
Exactly.
when I
Yeah.
graduated high school, I moved to Southern California to race dirt bikes. I got a job waiting tables and I bartended. And unfortunately, I got into drugs after I quit racing dirt bikes. But I could have went, straight from that existence for a couple years, having a good time, kind of growing up and learning the world straight into line work and been great. And like you could go to the I don't recommend people go to the military, but like the military, you can kind of go and learn, see the world, learn about the world, kind of figure
Yeah.
yourself out, figure out who you are, because how many kids really know who they are and what they
Right.
want to do when they get out of college at 18, especially in this day and age where how old are you?
I'm 26.
Okay, so you're about 14 years younger than me. And when I grew up in the 90s, like we grew up a lot faster than kids do
Mm,
today. We were
yeah.
out, I got off of school and I was out riding my bike with my buddies in a neighborhood, no supervision at all until it got dark. I
Yeah.
was driving myself to school when I was 16. Today, like I've got a little brother, a stepbrother that's 13 years old, and he is nowhere near as mature as I was at his age. And
Yeah.
he's not abnormal. That's just the age that we live in today. Kids are growing up later. So like
It's
expecting
this.
these young kids to know what they want to do with the rest of their life in an economic situation that is not favorable to them in any way. Like the average first time home buyer right now in this country is 39, you know? Like there's when my parents graduated high school in the 80s, my mom bought a house before she even graduated. She bought a house for like $170,000 or something like that. That same
Yeah.
house today is worth almost $1 million. It's a
Yeah.
it's
I
a
bet.
tiny little thing, you know what I mean? And like my little brother, he has no idea what he wants to do with the rest of his life. He has a horrible work ethic, just awful. And to throw him into a situation where he's going to have to figure it out when he's 18 is just not feasible at this point. Like,
Yeah. I think you could probably point a lot of that blame uh, at social media companies, the
sure.
phones, all these screens that we're, you know, interfacing with. A lot of these, I think, have to do with people not wanting to go out and experience things like bike riding, like
Yep.
you talked about, just hanging out with friends, going to a bar. I even see that slowing down. Going to bars with your friends, going to parties,
Yep.
little group get-togethers. And I suspect you'll start to see that decline even more, a little bit more, um, just because of the nature of these screens. I mean, why would you? Why would you go out when I could just call my buddy or play video games with my buddy or, do whatever? I don't need to go out and ride bikes with him. I could just do it right here. And I
Yep.
think that can come with some tremendous downsides. Some tremendous downsides. Like, first of all, you don't have a social network of people that you can bounce ideas off of. You can't have fun and really interact the same way that you can in person versus a screen. And
Yeah.
I think, you know, I'm not really quite sure why kids have decided to forego going outside entirely. I do think that it has mostly to do with the social media companies and these screens.
Sure. And I think that like there's a lot of value in being good at something when you're a kid.
Right.
Not every kid has athletic ability. Like sometimes you're born with it, sometimes you're not. It's kind of the roll of the dice in that aspect. But like as a kid, I was a good dirt bike rider. And
Hmm.
riding dirt bikes is very difficult. You watch it
Yeah.
on TV and it looks so easy. Like I remember as like a young adult when I moved to Southern California, I wanted to learn how to surf and I was amazed at how difficult it was. Like you watch people surfing on TV and it's just so it looks so easy, you know. And
Yeah.
I was a wakeboarder and a snowboarder, and I thought, yeah, I'll just jump on the surfboard and be good, you know. But like I could never figure out where to position myself best, you know, to catch a
Yeah.
wave. Like that was the hardest part. Once I was up on the board, I was good because I knew how to ride a board, but like getting in position and like learning the water and how it moves. And like I think, you know, video games and social media has kept kids inside and made it to where they're not really getting good at something. Like, sure, you could be good at a video game, but is that really fulfilling in some way?
Right.
Because you're not really like putting the work in, you know,
Yeah.
at, like as a kid, like I put a lot of work into being good at riding dirt bikes. And to me now, like I know how hard it is to get good at something. You know,
Yeah.
like I've always wanted to learn how to play the guitar. And I've always kind of stayed away from it because I know how hard it's going to be to get good at it and to be able to play the songs that I like. You know, I'm a metal guy, Ozzy Osbourne shirt on right now. And like I know how hard it would
Yeah.
be to learn how to play a Randy Rhoads solo. You know, like
Yeah.
that would be so difficult and would take years of my life to get to a point, especially with, you know, using a hook as a pick essentially. But like I think a lot of kids today aren't like putting effort into something to get good at it and to have that fulfillment of like I put the work in and I'm seeing it pay off, you
The
know.
discipline. The discipline.
Especially because video games have gotten so easy, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think what you're talking about, the discipline that I
Yes.
think is lacking from, a lot of the youth. I think that certain avenues are better for certain people. It's very important to know yourself and to know what you want. I know that's asking a lot from somebody that's young, but it's to have some semblance of an idea. Like I wouldn't recommend the military for everyone. But there are some themes and aspects of the military that I did like. I really enjoyed my time in the military and I got a lot out of it, but it is what you make it. So if you're the type of person that you're a go-getter, you're disciplined, you're hardworking, you're gonna see that pay off in the military and
Yeah.
even after. If you're one of those people that, just likes to kind of just stay in and play the video games and, the drink the Mountain Dew and order the Domino's pizza every night, then, I wish you the best of luck, but it's going to only get more and more competitive, out here. It's all out war,
Yeah.
especially with these screens. I mean, you can see everything. You can see the competition, which is something that I don't think many people could see, 50 years ago. But
Yeah.
I could just go online and see all the different companies I'm competing against. And I
Yeah.
think that it's discouraging for a lot of people. A lot of people just give up mentally before they even start.
Yeah.
And that's not really a good habit to get into. Um, and then you start, getting isolated, feeling alone. There's a lot of loneliness. I guess loneliness is going up in America, um, especially with young men. Women are confused. Everyone's just kind of confused out here. But you would think that they wouldn't be because, compared to our time on this planet, you know, we actually have a lot of stuff that we have available. We have hot water, running water,
Yeah.
food, go to the grocery store. These things are somewhat, recent, inventions. For the longest time of human history, we didn't have all these things. So it's just interesting to hear how loneliness and depression are on the rise. But if you look around and you don't listen to what you see online, if you just look around and look at your own life, most
Mhm.
people's lives are manageable.
Yeah.
The idea that I'm trying to, push is a certain level of gratitude. I think that's lacking, with everybody looking at their situation because we're all comparing ourselves to what we see.
Yeah. And I think self motivation is a big problem. Like, I think that self motivation is something that isn't really teachable. Like, you kind of have to just learn it for yourself. You know, like for me, you know, I was self motivated to be a good dirt bike rider. Once I got into bartending, you know, and waiting tables, like you have to be self motivated in that
Yeah.
industry to make money. It's not like just clocking into, you know, your hourly wage job and I'm going to sit here and do the least amount of work as possible, have an earbud in my ear and kind of just go through the motions and, collect a paycheck. Like that's not that job, and I made myself irreplaceable at the bars that I worked at. I was
Yeah.
capable of doing more than the average bartender, and you kind of had to do that in order to make money. If you just showed up and thought like, I'm just going to go through the motions today, you're not going to make money. Your
Yeah.
hourly wage is nothing at a bar. Like it's all about tips. And for me, like I had to go in and be motivated to do the best job that I possibly could. And I took that into line work, and in line work, like you can be an hourly wage lineman and just go through the motions and not really push yourself. But to me, like that was not what I wanted to do. Like I wanted to be in charge of a crew as soon as I could. Like I was more interested in like, why are we doing this? Not just tell me what to do for the day, I'll do it, and then I'll go back and watch football, the football game on TV at night. Like I wanted to know, why are we doing this way? What is going to happen? Why are we starting with this position? Why are we starting with this pole instead of this pole? Like every day
Yeah.
when we showed up at the job site, most of the guys that were at the same level as me was just like, okay, tell me what to do for the day. I'll do it. Then I'll go back home, get drunk, watch some TV, and go to sleep and do it again tomorrow. But for me, it was like, why are we doing it this way? I want to learn every aspect of this job because it's important to know the entirety of what I'm doing, and
Yeah. I think that's the big thing that separates people. I think most industries, uh, if you're an inquisitive person, if you have an inquisitive attitude and you're motivated enough, you're gonna go very far. You can go very far in virtually any industry. Um, there's always going to be people that just go through the motions. They just go through the motions, they get the check, they go home, like you said, they just get drunk or watch TV and then start it all over again. But if you want something out of life, if you got to be willing to push yourself, push others, hopefully, you know, um, I think that bringing others up with you overall pays dividends in the end. I'm a big believer in
rising tides raise all
right,
ships.
exactly. The lone wolf mentality will only get you so far. You need a network, you need people that you can trust and lean on, people that you can bring up with you. Hopefully you're in an environment that, is suitable for that. And if you're not, try to put yourself in that environment. Um, but yeah, going back to what you said earlier, a really good way, I think, to get involved and to get kids and the youth more active is sports. Like you said, you did dirt biking. I think just sports in general, it could really be anything. It could be chess, it could be basketball or football. It doesn't matter what it is. Just get outside and do something. I think that we need to be outside more often, get that sunlight, that vitamin D, in order to really um, connect with one another. And so we don't see things like the loneliness and depression, keep rising. I think sunlight is correlated with your mood. Don't quote me on that, but
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it's like correlated with your mood and everything. And I think if everyone's in a good mood, then we're gonna go far, collectively.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about your company. Is this something that you've been working on a while? Is this skills that you learned in the military, or was this some, other, outside of your job description, something that you've been interested in? How'd you get into this and what are kind of your plans with it?
Yeah, so the company is fairly recent. So it's called Heron Cyber and AI Solutions, HCAS. You can find it at hcas.io, hcas.io. And basically, what it is, it's a cybersecurity consulting company. So what we go in and do is we go in and get a baseline assessment to see where your vulnerabilities are from a security standpoint um, with your small business, or you can even do large businesses, but it's more tailored for small businesses. I was in IT in the military, so I actually worked a little bit with cybersecurity. IT encompasses a lot, right? So we worked with RF satellite communications, networking, troubleshooting, cybersecurity, all that kind of stuff kind of fell under that. And that's where I kind of got interested in it. And then I went on to get my degree in cybersecurity technology. And yeah, I just hit the ground running when got out and started this company.
How does AI factor into cybersecurity? I don't know a ton
So
about cybersecurity.
also cybersecurity, so AI, one of the packages and services that I offer is automating workflows, right? So AI will come in and basically do simple things like, let's say you want an auto response for an email. We go in and connect the tools for you and enable that. Just help with any way that we take a look at your business, any way that your business is lacking or can be improved or quicker, AI will solve it. AI can virtually solve almost anything that lags, you know,
So
or
are
is
you
very time
using
consuming.
like large language models, or is this more of like automated machine learning type of stuff?
It's both. It's a bit of both. So large language models helps give the guidance for exactly what we're going to have to be doing, where the vulnerabilities are, um, and then we try to automate workflows as efficiently as possible. One of the things that I try to strive for when doing this is to keep the language as um, non-technical as possible
Mhm.
because there's a lot of people out there that are not very tech savvy. And so I try to, make sure that everyone understands what's going on. And a lot of people just simply don't know what AI can do. There's a lot of companies that, maybe they have somebody that's running the company that's a little bit older or something like that. And they just don't have a clear idea of what AI truly is and its true capabilities. And so one of the things that I try to do when I go in there is explain, what you could be doing versus where you are and what you are doing. So, yeah,
I had an author on recently. He was a military guy too. He used his spare time in the military to write, and he wrote a couple fantasy novels about vampires. And I was kind of asking him like how he did the research, and because there's a lot of like biology and stuff involved in his books. And he was like, "Oh yeah, I read papers and I do this and that." And I go, "You ever tried ChatGPT?" And he's like, "No, what's that?" I'm like, "Oh man." Like if you're doing research on topics that you aren't really versed in, like you need to be using these LLMs because it's going
yeah,
to save you so much time. Like
right,
I've been writing a science fiction novel about like breakaway civilizations, and it has nanites and wormholes and all this stuff. And like I'm a big sci-fi reader. I really enjoy sci-fi. I watch some of it on TV, but I don't watch a ton of TV anymore. Um, but to me, like some of the more interesting parts of sci-fi, especially like one of my favorite guys is named Alistair Reynolds, and he has very like technical aspects to his sci-fi where he's explaining how something works. And to me, like that's the most interesting part a lot of times. It's like if you've got a wormhole, if you've got a faster than light spaceship, like how does it work? What type of engine is it using? Like how are
yeah,
you generating energy? Like I am interested in that stuff. And I think a lot of people aren't. So some sci-fi writers kind of shy away from going too deep into the technical aspects of it because it can kind of get boring. But to me, like I enjoy that. And so for for the book that I've been writing, like I want to explain every aspect of the technology that the characters are interfacing with. How does it work?
yeah,
How did they discover it? How do these technologies work together to make people's lives easier? And like to hear that that guy was just reading, scientific papers to come up
yeah,
with biological solutions for vampires. It's like, man, you're wasting your time by doing that. Like you need to be using these models that are capable of going through all of these papers in a split second and giving
yeah,
you, you don't want the thing to write your book for you. What you want to do is have it give you ideas, have it do the research for you so you can spend your time working on aspects of the story and the characters rather than doing research. A lot of times, like I'll read an Alistair Reynolds book, and these are written far before, large language models came out. And I'll read it and I'll be like, man, I bet he did 50 hours worth of research to do one page of
yeah,
of the book, essentially. And
yeah,
I think that like being able to use artificial intelligence to lighten your workflow is going to be a skill in its own that you are going to
yeah.
have to be proficient in the future.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, AI is if you're not using AI on a day-to-day basis, you're gonna fall behind.
Yep.
It's that simple. Because there are people that are using AI on a day-to-day basis. And the more you use AI, the more familiar you get, the more comfortable you get. You know, I use AI every single day. And,
So do
you
I.
know, it's been a lifesaver. It saves so much time doing virtually anything. And,
I don't
that
even
in and
use
of its that
I
in
don't
and of
even use search
itself,
engines anymore.
right, me neither.
There's no
Exactly.
point. I just,
Right.
if I'm looking for like what time a restaurant closes, sure, I'll use Google. But if I'm looking for a product to buy,
Yeah.
sometimes I'll use Google if I can't find the product that I want on Amazon. But like, as far as any other type of weird question that I have throughout the day, or if I'm doing research for the book or research for the podcast, like I'm using ChatGPT and Grok. I'm using them
Yeah.
back and forth because sometimes they're going to give you different answers and you have to suss out
Yeah.
which one is giving you the best answer and the most useful answer.
Yeah. I mean, that in and of itself is kind of like a skill. Just
Yep.
being able to use AI and prompt it correctly. Because prompting is a big part of AI. If you know how to
Yep.
prompt AI, then you could almost do anything you want. I see no limit to AI. I see no limit. I mean, I don't know what's in store for the future. Anybody who says they does,
Yeah. They're
I,
wrong.
I have a hard time listening to them. But um, yeah, I'm excited about what's going on with this. But like you said, if you fall behind, you're just gonna get lost. I mean, you got to use it every single day, or else, you know, you're gonna get outcompeted. So hopefully, uh, AI gets smarter, more sophisticated in the near future, and it's only gonna make everything so much easier for everybody.
Yep. My co-host is the founder and CEO of a company that is building AI agents that are going to be like I think the best route that we should be going with these things is not so much in the LLM model. Like I think an LLM is limited in that you're asking these things to do way too much. And once the
Mm,
energy requirements become, so heavy for these large models to train on everything, they're going to get slower and less accurate, I think, the more you add to them. But if you're doing a specific job and you have an agent that's tailored to do that job for you and is able to do it on minimal energy requirements and maybe a its own CPU or GPU or whatever the hell they're called. I'm not a hardware guy, but like I know IBM is working on chips that are kind of mimicking the human brain that are
yeah,
supposed to do these, large know all AGI type of things. Like personally, I don't see that being the optimal route for these things. I see like a narrow tailored agent that's going to help you in your everyday life and know your requirements and know what you're doing on the day to day. And is just going to work silently in the background to make your life easier and make you more efficient and faster at doing your job.
yeah. I mean, the more you tell, without giving too much personal information into the AI, the more you tell AI, the more it knows about you, the more
Yep.
accurate and more, detailed your answer is going to be when you prompt it. Um, a lot of people tease me about using how much I use AI. I'm like, I want it to learn. I want it to know me enough to where I prompted something basic, it'll have a tailored response just for me. And those tailored responses that you're talking about, I think are going to go a long way, especially if you're a driven motivational person and you have a clear path where you want to go. Those tailored responses could make the difference between, you know, you and you and the competition. I mean, if you use Google, you give one person Google, you give another person AI, AI wins 9 times out of 10. I mean, I don't see a scenario where Google would ever trump AI. I mean, they have their own AI, but if you take that out,
Yeah.
um,
I have like I've been using ChatGPT mostly for writing the book that I'm working on. And I have like a project, I created a project for the book and I wrote out a really long prompt about like what the book is about. So it has an idea of what I'm trying to do. And as I ask it questions, okay, I want to do this. How would that work? I would like to do this. How could that work? it knows exactly where I'm trying to go with this,
Yeah.
and I don't have to prompt it, in a different, I don't have to tell it exactly what I'm trying to do. Like it has an idea of the book itself, and it's like working with a second author in a lot of ways. Like, sometimes you have books that are co-authored by two different people. One person's doing the characters, the other person's doing the story. Like I don't really know how they break it up, but maybe somebody's doing the research and somebody else. I don't know. But for me, this is like having a research assistant that knows exactly where I'm trying to go with this. It knows the technologies that exist within the world that I'm creating. And it's giving me options like, okay, you could use this and this to do this, or you could use this and that to do that. It's not like having to explain myself on Google or search through these ridiculous papers that are hard to read and hard to get the actual data that I'm looking for. Like it's like you said, you have to be able to do this in the future. Like I don't see
Yeah.
any way around it.
I mean, the AI is not going anywhere. I
No,
mean, if you're one of the people, if you think AI is going to just disappear one day, you're just not paying attention. AI is not going anywhere. It's here and it's here to stay.
yeah,
So you can
it's
either,
only going to get better. It's just about how fast and how much better it gets.
exactly. That's the thing. That's the somewhat what can be a scary part is how fast are we going to be moving? What is the regulation behind it? Who's regulating it? Do they have our best interest at heart? Um, all that stuff I think is worthy of a conversation. Um, and the speed, 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 speed. If you're not moving at a certain speed, you're going to get left behind. I often wonder, like, when I'm not in these rooms, but when they're having these high level conversations, I imagine in these rooms with like the global leaders, how do they really think AI is going to be impacting us? Are we
They have no
overestimating
idea.
AI? Are we underestimating it? Like, what does that actually look like? I often wonder.
I think they have no idea. I don't think
I
they
don't
have
think
any
so
idea
either.
what they're actually dealing with. They're so used to being in control of every aspect of human society that they can't possibly like. So there's some things that like AI will tell you that those rooms of people don't want you to know. You can
Yeah,
have a conversation with it about economics and inflation and get the actual answers as to like what inflation is, why we're living in the economic situation that they don't want you to know. It's not
yeah,
a it's not a like I don't know about you, but I didn't learn anything about economics when I was in high school. This is something
yeah,
that they do not want you to know about. Like
right,
if you know about economic systems and how they work, you can see that really the only difference between the two controlling parties are cultural differences. They both have the
yeah,
same economic and fiscal policies for the most part. Every new administration is going to print more money than the last. And what does that do?
yeah,
It robs you of the value of your money that you are able to work with. Like the middle class is being hollowed out in this country. Like, sure, there's still a middle class, but the purchasing power that is available to the middle class is far less than it was when I was a kid, and even when you were a kid, and it's getting worse and worse every year. People are gonna have to like realize that we're being stolen from, regardless of who's in power. And I saw like a study was done recently where they took kids out of normal schools and got rid of the teachers and just had them learning on AI for half of the day and then had them going outside and learning life skills for the second half of the day. And they
mm.
were testing 90% above normal schools
Oh,
within
wow,
just like a couple months. It was
wow,
night and day difference. And like that to me is the future. Like I don't think kids should be wasting their entire day in a school where they're learning nothing. You know,
right,
you can argue that they're learning while they're in there, but test results say something completely different. We have
yeah,
some of the worst schools in the developed world, and I don't think that's an accident. I think that these schools are meant to train the next level of slaves and middle management and to have bow down to authority instead of asking questions that are going to improve your life.
right. I mean that you hit the nail on the head. I agree 100%. It is basically you just going through the motions. You barely learn anything going through school, if anything at all, and they're just putting you into the workforce, hoping you'll be, generating money for those who are, running and running the country and putting in these policies. Um, yeah, kids, they need to. I think we're going to have a serious overhaul of the educational system as a whole. Like the whole thing is going to have to be redone because what's going on right now is not going to work in the future. It's just not. There's just no way to be able to be going this in this direction for this long and not have it collapse in some way.
Yeah. And
Um,
I think that like the ruling class looks at AI as like a tool for warfare, and they don't really see that like this can also be a tool for personal empowerment,
yeah,
to make people's lives better and maybe show the cracks in the power structure that they are trying to hide from people on a daily basis. I really don't think that they see it as a threat to their existence the way they should.
yeah, yeah. I completely agree. And one of the things that I often worry about with AI is its effect on the polarizing aspect of AI, because in social media in general, just technology in general, how it's very divisive and very polarizing. Because AI, I don't know if you noticed, but it'll like almost reaffirm your preconceived notions about, the world. It'll say something, jolly at the beginning. It'll say, "Oh, thank you for asking that question. You're really insightful for asking that question." Or, I don't know how much, you know, time you spent playing with AI, but I noticed that happens a lot. And I often wonder about some of the rabbit holes that some people can go down when using AI too much and not engaging with the rest of the world. Because if you're just solely using AI and you don't have that um, real world experience interacting with real people, that could be a problem down the road. Um, I think. And one of the things that you can use to solve that problem is engaging in things that make you slightly uncomfortable, if it does make you uncomfortable, like going out, spending time with friends, family, getting involved with the community. I'm a big advocate for, getting involved with the community and talking to people and really fostering healthy relationships.
Yeah. The US and a lot of developing countries around the world have a big problem with falling birth rates. You know,
Yeah.
it's becoming harder and harder for young men especially to, have a relationship, to have kids. I mean, if you're not capable of buying a house until you're 39, how are you supposed to have kids and
Yeah.
start a life? And I think that like AI could make that problem much much worse as you start to get these chatbots that are more akin to like human beings, and you put a face, behind
Yeah.
the words of an AI. And like, man, I don't want to see young men especially, have to lean on AI girlfriends to have some sort
Yeah.
of like semblance of a relationship, but it seems like it's an inevitability at this point.
Yeah. I mean, it's coming down the road, and you see some of the early models of these AI uh, humanoid robots, and it's just baffling what they're able to do even now. I can't even imagine 5 years from now, how realistic the those AI robot girlfriends would be.
Yeah,
Young
and I
men
don't
are
think
going to
they even
be,
need a robot. I think you could do the
yeah,
screen just with, look at what's going on with OnlyFans. How many of these young kids and young men are like being enamored by OnlyFans models that are, you know, talking to them, just
yeah.
having somebody to talk to, and they're paying for it. And like, I don't, ugh, it's
It's
getting,
actually it's actually it's kind of sad when
it's
you hear
very
stories
sad.
about, stuff like that. Um, and you want to like pull them out of that hole, but they have to want to come out. They have to want it. Some people like genuinely like doing that kind of stuff. They're comfortable with where they're at. And I'm not a big proponent of forcing somebody to do something that they don't want to do. I don't believe in that at all. I'm a big advocate for, autonomy, free will, all these things. And if they like it, it's hard for me to want to take them with me if they're truly enjoying what they're doing, but is it going to bring them fulfillment long term is the big thing, because there's intense pleasure and like immediate gratification.
Yeah.
Um, but is it a good long term solution? I would argue it's probably not.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's it's going to rot people's brains. And I think people are so used to having relationships over screens at this point, whether it's a video game where you're chatting with the people that you're playing games with that are on the other side of the world or on the other side of the country, or if it's social media where you're chatting with people. Like, I think that it's something that the younger generation is going to get more and more comfortable with over time. And I
Yeah.
think that they're going to be comfortable with having this relationship with an automated chatbot. They're not going to be fulfilled, but they're not going to know what fulfillment actually is because they're not going to have the experience in the outside world to know that what they're doing is a hollow relationship. It's a shell of what a real relationship actually can be, and
Yeah.
it's
And you said something about the declining birth rates. That could be a huge factor and a huge problem in the future, maybe even in the immediate future, um, because it is on the decline, and we are seeing people being less socialized and people are not engaging as much. I think that's going to have some serious, potentially catastrophic, ripple effects going into the future. A lot of people, I've heard people say things like they advocate for the declining birth rate. A lot of people like it. I'm not necessarily one of those
overpopulation
people.
problem. Yeah, I'm not
You,
either. Like I'm always, looking for technological solutions and like I don't think that population is a problem. Like I
right.
think the earth has a massive carrying capacity, especially if we move, you know, certain aspects of our society into outer space,
Yeah.
We could grow as much food as we want out there. We can have data centers and electricity out there, and I think that like if we get smarter with the way we allocate resources, that population's not going to be a problem on Earth. Like
Yeah.
if you fly over the country, most of it is empty space.
Mm, yeah. I mean, I definitely think that in our lifetime, I think we will see humans and colonies start to form on other planets. I think that's definitely a real possibility, especially with AI in the mix. I mean, you hear Elon Musk always talking about Mars.
Yeah.
Elon Musk has his hands in so many different industries and things, but one of the main things he talks about is, Mars.
Yeah.
I think there's a real possibility that you will see maybe even full-on cities on Mars at some point.
I think actually we're going to go more towards like space habitats rather than like Mars.
Also,
I think
yeah,
I
also
think
that, yeah.
Mars is going to be a difficult solution to like colonize. Like I don't see us terraforming Mars in the
Mm,
near future. Like that's going to take a very long time. I think the gravity's going to be an issue. I think, there's going to be a lot of issues, but like a rotating O'Neill cylinder where you've got like,
yeah,
a half a mile long cylinder that spins on an axis and
yeah,
creates gravity, like I could see us utilizing those in the near future. Like we only need a couple of technologies to really start, building those things. We need good automation, we need cheap space flight or like, some sort of launch loop or, like a space elevator or something like that. Once we're able, and that's why I think like data centers in space are going to be a really good thing because right now, like nothing in space is profitable. Like aside from rocket launches for satellites and stuff like that, like that's profitable. But actually going up there and doing work within space is not profitable at all. But you start putting data centers up there, and those are immediately generating profit. You start
yeah,
doing manufacturing up there, like so. I had when I had my amputation, my doctor does like he did transplants as well. And I was like, well, what about a transplant? And he's like, nah, you don't want that. Like you'd have to take anti-rejection drugs for the rest of your life. And I'm like, so why do you do them if they're dangerous, And he's like, well, I think that we're going to be able to like grow or 3D print a human hand with,
yeah,
by the end of my, career and I'll be able to do transplants. So this is kind of like practice in a lot of ways.
yeah,
And imagine if you're able to 3D print up in outer space in low gravity or zero gravity, like that opens up a lot of possibilities for, body body parts and printing organs,
yeah.
all that
And
type of
then where
stuff.
does that
That is
go? Are you going to be able
profitable,
to print a whole human? And then
maybe.
you start going down that rabbit hole, and it's very interesting what they're able to do. I know they're able to. You can like clone your dog, I think right now.
Yeah,
Like you
you
can
can.
clone animals. So the technology is there. Once it becomes mainstream, I don't quite know what that means. But as far as like having habitable places in space, I could get behind that idea. That sounds like a good idea for me, especially it'll quiet the people that advocate for population decline because you don't have an excuse anymore. Because I hear most people say that, there's not enough space, we don't have enough resources. Well, if we go to other planets or go into outer space, we can just generate more resources,
Yep.
more space, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I'm a
Energy
big,
energy's cheap and easy to use, and
yeah,
I mean you have abundant sunlight that you can use for solar panels up in space. And you know, one of the problems like that they talk about with climate change is like heat. But what they don't tell you is that every form of electricity generates heat, no matter what you're doing. Like you're generating heat. But if you can offload that into the atmosphere, then
right.
heat's not no longer a problem. And even a lot of their solutions, like they want fusion energy. Well, what do you think a 1 million degree, 100 million degrees of plasma is going to do for heat on the planet?
Yeah,
Like I don't think, they have like that Kardashev scale where you've got the type 1, type 2, type 3
yeah,
civilizations. And like I'm not convinced that it's possible to be a type 1 civilization on a planet because you're going to be generating so much heat that you're going to
yeah,
kind of destroy the atmosphere, or you're going to destroy a lot of things. But you offload that into the atmosphere and all of a sudden you're good.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, you bring up the Kardashev scale. That's something that I've seen a couple times. I've seen some videos on it. I've looked into it a little bit. That's really interesting. The Type 1 civilization, I think, is actually not too far off.
No.
I don't think we're too far off from, and but when you talk to people, a lot of people just generally aren't really aware, and I think it has to do with people's just lack of knowledge. People are so comfortable just believing what they already believe. They have no interest in expanding or growing in any way. They're just comfortable where they are with what they're doing. And I hope that that trend doesn't continue um, because the type 1 civilization that you're talking about uh, is, I think, a lot sooner than people expect.
Yeah,
And we
it's
need to figure out
attainable
how to
in our
navigate
lifetime.
that.
If you took the right steps and really planned it out, like it's attainable in our lifetime, I think.
Yeah,
It, like I said, just a couple of different technologies need to be, just a little bit better for us to move up into space. And like I think Elon's, Starship rocket, that's, going to change a lot of things. Like it's going to
yeah,
allow for major payloads to be taken out up into orbit. And it's not going to, the price right now, the price to send like a pound of something into orbit is insanely expensive. But as those rockets get bigger and cheaper, and faster to turn around, that price goes down very fast. And once you're up and you've got a foothold in space and you're making money up there, things get a lot better. Like there's certain things that we could do with computer chips and superconductors and conductors that you can't do in gravity. Like there's certain materials that you can't make in gravity because, like you dump like ink into water and it sinks to the bottom. That's the same type of thing with a lot of different chemicals. Like they're not going to mix properly because of gravity, but you put that up into space, and now all of a sudden you can play around with different mixtures and different materials and, you know, have technologies that are unattainable here on Earth. And if those technologies help different companies in a lot of ways and are able to make them more profitable and make them more money, well, they're going to be willing to put out the bill to have those things made up in space. And now you've got a profitable business model up there. You can just keep on expanding.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, expansion is going to be expansion in and of itself is kind of part of who we are. We are constantly, I think, as a species, looking to expand, and I think it's only the next step. I mean, we've already put somebody on the moon allegedly,
Yeah.
and
Yeah, I don't know about that.
yeah, allegedly. So, but expansion is definitely part of who we are, and I'm beyond excited to see where we go uh, in the coming years and the type of future that we're going to be leaving our children. Um, I'm beyond excited for it. I hope that everyone else has a chance to really research and take in these last few moments
Yeah.
of
I hope they
life right
come up
now.
with some life extension technologies because I want to see
Oh
what
yeah.
happens. You know, as a
Oh
sci-fi
yeah.
guy, like I want to see what that stuff looks like. I want to see other planets. I want to, get to witness that stuff and, hopefully, there's some sort of afterlife and you can see that from there, but I'd love to be around to see it.
Yeah. I think you will be. I think you will
Yep.
be. I
Hope
think
so.
the life extension technology, I think it'll first start with extending life, and then who knows what happens after that. But I think that's definitely coming in the near future, probably like 10 to 20 years.
Yeah, I sure hope so. Well, Ronald, I think that's the perfect way to get out of here. It was a pleasure
All right.
talking with you. I'm gonna
Great
have
talking to you as
the
well.
link to your company down in the description. So if anybody wants to hit you up and procure your services, I'll send them your way.
Sounds good. I
All
appreciate you
right.
having me.
Thanks. Thanks again. Good night.
Yeah.
All right. We're done recording. Man, I've
Okay.
got one of the